the Terrifying Lies podcast, with music and stories by Craig Nybo. Greetings, friends, and welcome to another episode of Terrifying Lies. I'm your host, Craig Nybo. In this podcast, we explore the dark corners of human imagination, uncovering tales of mystery and intrigue. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the unknown. Your support helps keep Terrifying Lies on the air, so if you'd like to help ensure that I can continue bringing you these bone-chilling stories, head over to craignybo.com/support and click on the links. Let's dive into today's tale, shall we? Welcome to Red Annex Part 4 of 7. If you haven't heard Parts 1 through 3, I encourage you to go back and tune in. Otherwise, you might find yourself a bit discombobulated. This story follows a Special Forces unit deep in the heart of the annexed San Fernando Valley, where chaos reigns supreme. Tasked with gathering recon and saving lives, they find themselves facing off against locals infected with a virus that sparks insanity and cannibalism. In today's episode, we follow soldiers Watson and Pitts as they investigate a group of hostiles holed up near a gas station. Their struggle for survival intensifies as they confront the horrors of war in this apocalyptic landscape. Well, enough stalling. Let's get on with it. I'll see you on the other side. Chapter 8, Extraction minus 66 minutes. Watson and Pitts. The two infected men who hunkered in the crow's nest at the top of the Union 76 sign popped off more shots. Watson and Pitts peeled to cover behind a building 50 yards from the gas station. Dozens of tires smoldered in a horseshoe pattern around the two men's roost. Watson choked on the coil of black fumes. Tires would burn for days.
We need to get closer so we can recon those assholes,
Pitts said, coughing on the haze. He pulled a camouflage bandana from his pocket and tied it over his mouth. Watson did the same. They might not be alone, Watson said. Pitts leaned around the corner for a look. An 18-wheeler cattle truck sat in one of the station's diesel stalls. The big rig would make a barrier against the crow's nest snipers. On three, we're moving over behind that truck, Pitts said. Watson nodded, preparing to raise his weapon. Pitts counted to 3, then ran into the open, touching off suppression fire toward the crow's nest. The two men in the crow's nest hit the deck in a spray of incoming bullets. Watson fell in behind Pitts, laying down a few of his own bursts. The two soldiers cleared the 50-yard distance. Just as Pitts moved behind the truck, he spotted something up in the crow's nest that confirmed his suspicions and cooled his blood.
Those were the hostiles who fired on the Chinook,
Pitts said. What are you saying? Watson asked.
They have RPG-7s. When everyone was ducking for cover in the helicopter, I sneaked a peek through the window. Call me weird, but when someone yells incoming, I kinda want to see what's coming.
Where did they get RPG-7s?
Probably a museum or some gun-crazy collector. Can't be sure. But I count 4 launchers up there.
You gotta be kidding me. I thought that must have been a one-time fluke. Watson leaned out around the cattle truck and spotted the rocket launchers.
They'll shoot us out of the sky when we try to fly out of here, Pitts said. Even if they're idiots, they'll hit us at least once with 4 chances to screw it up.
I think we can take them, Watson said, still glancing up around the corner, up at the crow's nest.
You're right, but it has to be up, down, and away, Pitts said. There must be plenty of eyes on that tower. It's their best tactical location. They'll protect it. If we take them out from here, more will take up that position, and we can't roost up there or their friends will climb out of the shadows and swarm us like ants.
We need to get those RPGs. The two soldiers stood against a putrid cattle truck. Even more powerful than the scent of charred rubber, the smell of death hit the two soldiers' senses. Watson glanced through one of the trailer's airports and spotted around 30 head of cattle, dead, lying over one another, bloated, stiff with rigor.
Flies swarmed, dipping and weaving, lavishing in their version of paradise. Pitts stole occasional glances around the trailer at the two hostiles. The snipers stood on a steel diamond plate floor, staring over the railing down at the cattle truck. The hostiles could take out the rig with one of their RPGs, but they would blow the whole gas station and probably their roost with it in the bargain. "The cops arrested me when I was 16, Watson said. "What does that have to do with anything?" "My brother and I filled up a handful of tennis balls with a mixture of Dawn dish soap and gasoline. Homemade napalm. We hot-glued cannon fuses from a model rocket kit into the holes. We lit them up and threw them into a field. I would have arrested your asses myself." The place burned for days. They had to evacuate half the neighborhood before firefighters put it out. "What are you saying?" "We have a great big tennis ball up there." Pitts leaned out and looked up at the enormous Union 76 ball on the roost. "Two questions. Where are we going to get enough napalm, or any napalm for that matter, and how are we going to get it up there?" "We have diesel fuel." Watson put a hand on the gas pump. "And we have soap." He pointed at a drive-through car wash connected to the Union 76 station's mini-mart. "I'm sure there's a hose around." "All right, let's say somehow we get a hose up there and we pump up our ingredients from here. If that thing overflows, the tires will set it off. The whole place will blow, us with it." "Not if we don't exceed the volume of the sphere and regulate the flow," Watson said. "How are we supposed to do that?" "Use your rangefinder. We can do the calculation from here." Pitts shrugged off his pack. After a moment of fumbling, he drew out a pair of sand-colored rangefinder binoculars. He raised them to his eyes and leaned out for cover for a better look at the 76 ball. One of the infected hostiles touched off a round. The bullet ricocheted off the pavement a handful of feet from Pitts' position. He fell back behind the cattle trailer and pushed up against the steel. "You're gonna have to lay down suppression fire," Pitts said. "I'll do it from over there." Watson flicked his chin toward the front of the truck. Watson moved along the cattle trailer, weapon raised, and found a position at the front where he could aim unobstructed at the two infected snipers. He raised his rifle and fired a burst, careful not to punch holes in the Union 76 ball. The hostiles dove for cover, hitting the steel grating so hard that Watson heard it ring above the roar of the flames. He continued laying down suppressive fire. One of the hostiles wrangled his rifle around and aimed at Watson. He fired wide. The two untrained yahoos weren't going to hit anything, but it wasn't the two yahoos that scared Watson. It was the swarm that would come after he and Pitts took him down. "I've got it," Pitts shouted. "We have a diameter of 82 inches. Watson moved to the rear of the cattle trailer to join Pitts. "And every high school kid says, 'What's the use of learning stupid geometry?'" Pitts blinked. "You're telling me you don't know how to calculate the volume of a sphere based on its diameter?" "Just remember, little man, I'll crush you with my little finger." Watson laughed. But Pitts wasn't lying. Watson had seen Pitts knock out more than one man with a well-placed blow. "I'll leave the heavy lifting to you. Let me handle the math." Watson dug into his breast pocket and pulled out a short pen and pad of paper, something he had made a habit of carrying since enlisting. It took him just over 5 minutes to work out the geometry. Chapter 9. The challenge: calculate how many gallons of diesel fuel and soap, at a ratio of 1-to-1, Sergeant Pitts and Watson should pump into the Union 76 ball without spilling any down the crow's nest and prematurely setting off their makeshift napalm bomb. Here are the facts. 1. The Union 76 ball has a diameter of 82 inches. 2. 231 cubic inches equals 1 gallon. If you're up to the challenge, use your own method to solve this problem, or read below for an alternate technique. First, calculate the radius of the sphere. The radius equals 1/2 the diameter. Sergeant Pitts measured the diameter of the sphere at 82 inches. Here's the equation. 82 inches diameter divided by 2 equals 41 inches of radius. The Union 76 ball has a radius of R equals 41 inches. Given the radius of 41 inches, you must use the correct geometric formula to determine the volume of the Union 76 ball. The formula, where V equals volume and pi equals 3.14, is V equals 4/3 multiplied by pi r cubed. Now plug in the radius for r. Here's the formula with all given values. Doing some of the math, we get v equals 4 over 3 multiplied by 3.14 multiplied by 74,088 inches. Refining the math, v equals 4 over 3 multiplied by 3.14 multiplied by 74,088 inches. Refining the math even further, v equals 4 over 3 multiplied by 232,636.32 inches. Finally, we get our answer. V equals 310,181.76 inches cubed. Convert the unit of measurement from cubic inches to cubic gallons with the ratio of 231 cubic inches per cubic gallon. Use unit analysis to make the conversion where G equals the total cubic gallons. Start with the Union 76 ball's volume in cubic inches, which is 310,181.76 inches cubed. Refining the math, 310,181.76 cubed over 1 multiplied by gallons cubed over 231 cubed equals G. Refining the math even further, 310,181.76 divided by 231 gallons cubed equals G. Finally, we get the answer. G, rounded, equals 1,342 gallons cubed. Therefore, the Union 76 ball's volume in gallons cubed is 1,342, rounded. Next, how many gallons of diesel fuel and soap at the ratio of 1:1 should Sergeants Pitts and Watson pump into the Union 76 ball before it overflows? Divide the total volume in gallons in half to determine the correct amounts of diesel fuel and soap. Here's the calculation. 1,342 divided by 2 equals 671 gallons. Therefore, Sergeants Pitts and Watson should pump 671 gallons of diesel fuel and the same of soap in order to fill the full volume of the Union 76 ball without overflowing the container and causing a premature explosion. Chapter 10. Extraction minus 62 minutes. Watson and Pitts. Burning tires sent a mat of black smoke up into the sky, causing premature dusk by choking off the sun. Pitts and Watson moved together from the cover of the cattle tractor trailer across the parking lot toward the car wash. Watson took point, keeping his eyes on their destination while Pitts touched off suppression rounds toward the two hostiles in the crow's nest. The two untrained hostiles hit the deck. One of the snipers lying on the diamond plate deck reeled off an odd sound, a high-pitched and percussive shrill. "It's a signal," Watson said, keeping his eye on the car wash ahead. "Yeah, I got that." Watson caught movement in his peripheral view. He turned in time to see a trio of hostiles approaching from across the street. Two women and a lumbering man. One of the women raised a .22 pistol and popped off 4 firecracker shots. A slug thunked into Watson's body armor, rattling his scapula like a boxer's jab. Watson stopped just long enough to level his aim at the approaching woman. He let his breath out in a measured release and squeezed the trigger. The bullet entered the left side of her chest. A patch of something flew from her back and slapped down on the street. Her body unhinged. She collapsed without ceremony or drama. Watson moved back into point. Pitts glanced at him, uncertainty in his eyes. Watson had just killed the first hostile to both men's knowledge. Watson had made a unilateral decision that could affect the entire U.S. Army. Watson felt the weight of his act, but hadn't the United States trained him to kill without question when the rules of engagement warranted such? The woman had fired first. She'd hit Watson before he returned fire, but shooting at a U.S. citizen would never feel right, even in the most extreme circumstances. Shots reported from the crow's nest. 2 rounds hit the pavement uncomfortably close to Pitts and zinged away in random directions. "We'll deal with them when we reach the car wash," Pitts said. The 2 soldiers quickened their pace. The remaining pair of approaching hostiles did nothing to help their fallen companion. They pushed forward, one of them armed with a 2x4, the other with a length of chain. Shots rained down from the crow's nest contingency, but as long as Pitts and Watson kept moving, they made themselves into challenging targets. The 2 soldiers reached the car wash and ran into one of the 3 automated garages. Pitts watched their entry point while Watson cleared the garage, moving quickly over its length, following the muzzle of his MK-16. He glanced out the exit port on the other side of the tunnel, searching for more hostiles. None caught his eye. Behind the fabric agitators and mechanics, a door stood in the middle of the garage's inner wall. "Watch R6! I'm gonna try this door," Watson said. Pitts leaned against the entry port and aimed at the approaching hostiles. He squeezed the trigger. He dropped the faster of the pair, the woman with the chain. The final hostile, a fat man brandishing a 3-foot-length 2x4, continued his advance without even glancing at his fallen girlfriend. Pitts fired. The shot just missed the fat man. The hostile ducked for cover behind an abandoned Hyundai Sonata. Watson tried the door. Locked. He stepped to the side and kicked the doorknob until it broke from its mount. He heard shuffling from the car wash's exit port. With a glance, he spotted 4 hostiles approaching from the rear. He aimed and fired 2 shots. 2 of the men dropped. As they crumpled to the pavement, Watson felt the vast vestiges of guilt leave him. His body switched into survival autopilot. Pitts wheeled around at the report of Watson's rifle. He spotted the other 2 assailants. He aimed and sent 3 2-round bursts into them. Both men fell. 7 hostiles so far since the man up in the crow's nest had chirped out his signal. More would come. Watson drew a knife he kept sheathed over his left breast. He jammed it into the doorknob's mechanics and twisted until the apparatus gave way. He used his fingertips to slide back the latch bolt. He opened the door and found precisely what he wanted: a long industrial water hose coiled on a hook inside the tiny utility closet. The utility room housed a network of tubes through which the car wash conducted water, soap, and wax. "I'm gonna need a minute," Watson said. "You have less than that," Pitts said, splitting his attention between the tunnel's entrance and exit ports. So far, no more hostiles, but nothing draws the assholes out of the dark like shots fired. Watson removed his pack and stepped into the utility room. He undid the Velcro top and pulled out a roll of camouflage duct tape. He glanced over the transparent tubes. They ran from underground tanks, up through the utility room and into the car wash's machinery. One contained clear liquid, water. The other 2 contained pink and blue fluids, soap and wax. Watson shut them all off by turning fixtures mounted near the ground. Electronic meters sat fixed at the bases of each tube, displaying the amount of liquid remaining in the underground tanks. Each tank contained at least 1,500 gallons, more than enough. The next question: which tank contained soap, blue or pink? He thought about every time he'd taken his old beater of a Honda through the car wash. Pink seemed like the right color for the soap cycle. He cut the tube with his knife. Pressurized residue exploded from the severed pipe and spattered over the front of his body armor. He wiped blots of it from his face and inspected it. Soap. He placed the hose at the end of the soap tube and fixed it with round after round of duct tape. He feared the moisture would loosen the tape, so he applied it generously. "We have company," Pitts said from his post at the open utility door. 5 hostiles approached the car wash's exit port. "I'm almost done," Watson said as he wrapped the splice. Pitts took time to aim. These diseased hostiles weren't much in the skills department. They approached in broad daylight, not doing much for cover. Pitts feared the swelling numbers fueled by their boldness. He felt a surge in the offing. He sensed that he and Watson didn't have much more time before scores of them converged. Pitts fired, aimed, aimed, and fired again. He dropped 3 with clean hits to center mass. The other 2 sprinted out of view. The tunnel limited Pitts' line of sight. For all he knew, hostiles gathered in clumps just outside the garage's ports. Watson came out of the pump room and headed toward the entrance port with hose in hand. Pitts stopped him. "You better let me take that," he said. "You're a better shot, and I'm gonna need suppressive fire." Watson handed the hose over. "Feed this into that big-ass orange ball and get back here. I'll take out those 2 bastards before you get up the ladder." Watson angled a glance toward the crow's nest. Pitts nodded. Both soldiers headed to the entrance port. They studied Pitts' run to the tower. Other than the 2 crow's nest bastards, no hostiles stood out in plain sight. "I'd prefer you shoot him sooner than later," Pitts said, looking up at the 2 snipers. "I got him," Watson said. He took a knee and aimed with great care at the first of the 2 hostiles. Pitts ran into the open, only hampered by the time it took to unspool the hose as he moved. Watson touched off his first round before the 2 hostiles had a chance to duck for cover. One of the men leaned over the rail, limp. For a moment he hung there, wiggling. making a last effort to fight through the pain and regain his equilibrium. Gravity won. He tipped over the edge and plummeted out of sight behind the burning tires. In the roar of the fire, Watson didn't hear the man's body crunch on the pavement. The other man opened fire at Pitts. Shots thunked all around him as he advanced. Trusting his life to Watson, he focused on moving, both hands tied up, with unspooling the hose as he trotted toward the tower. Watson touched off the second round. The last man at the top of the tower curled backward. Watson rejoiced internally as the man's rifle pinwheeled over the edge. The hostile crouched down against the rail, nursing a wound in his shoulder. Watson could practically hear the man's breath rasping as he nursed the bite of a 5.56 millimeter round. Watson estimated that Pitts had nearly made the base of the ladder. He sighted the crouching man and waited. He wouldn't shoot unless the man became a threat. Pitts appeared over the smoldering rubber, ascending the ladder a rung at a time, the hose over one shoulder. The crow's nest hostile swallowed the pain and fumbled for one of the RPG-7s leaning against the rail next to him. He made a half-assed attempt to raise the weapon and aim at Pitts. "Oh, no you don't," Watson said. He finessed the trigger and finished the man with a direct hit to the heart. The RPG clattered down onto the diamond plate as the man tipped over. Pitts made the crow's nest with plenty of hose to spare. He looked down at the dead sniper. The poor guy looked to be in his mid-50s, probably a father, maybe even a grandfather. He wore business casual khakis, a button-down shirt, and a Colorado jacket. Anyone would mistake him for a successful businessman, if not for mats of rumpled hair on his head and the filth that lined his clothing. Sores dotted the man's neck like posies. Pus ran from the wounds, oozing through his shirt. Pitts wondered just what kind of freedom fight these hostiles hoped to win. The U.S. Army had come to help, yet the infected seemed to want nothing but to kill. Pitts drew a knife from his chest sheath. He scanned his surroundings from the bird's-eye perch. For a moment, he spotted no hostiles, a welcome reprieve. But if he'd seen a handful of them, more crouched in cover looking for an opportunity to attack. He plunged his knife into the Union 76 ball near the top of the sphere. He worked the blade until he had enough space to insert the end of the hose. He unslung his pack and drew a roll of duct tape from an inner pouch. He fixed the hose to the outer surface of the orange sphere with several layers of tape. Watson pumped his fists as he watched Pitts insert the hose. He wanted to get the soap pumping, but he needed to stay vigilant for more hostiles that might threaten Pitts as he climbed down and made his way back to the car wash. A shot reported as Pitts leaned down to hook up the 4 RPGs. If he hadn't ducked, a bullet might have hit him. He heard the bullet whiz overhead. Pitts flattened on the diamond plate, eyes wide open, scanning for the shot's origin. Watson leaned out from cover, trying to catch a glimpse of the sniper. Nothing. He moved around the edge of the car wash entrance, panning back and forth for hostiles. He spotted a muzzle flash behind a parked panel van in an adjacent smoke shop's parking lot. Another shot flashed. The sniper bunkered between the truck, sights on Pitts. Watson trotted outside and found cover behind the cattle truck where he could gain a better vantage of the panel van. Even from there, he couldn't make line of sight. He raised his radio and called Pitts.
"Pitts, you okay?"
he asked. Pitts responded.
"Do you have any idea who's shooting up my ass?" "Check your 8 o'clock. Panel truck in the smokehouse parking lot."
Pitts shifted around the bright orange ball until he spotted the panel truck. The side of the truck read, 3 Gorillas Moving Service. Someone had wrapped the van with a graphic of 3 cartoon gorillas hefting furniture and boxes above their heads. A sniper leaned out from behind the van and aimed up at the crow's nest. Boom! The bullet thunked into the bottom of the diamond plate deck, too close for comfort. Whoever sat behind the van could shoot, maybe ex-military or law enforcement. Before Pitts could get a fix on the sniper, the guy ducked back into cover. From a prone position, Pitts reached out and grabbed one of the 4 RPG-7s lying on the iron grating. How rocket launchers had ended up in the middle of the San Fernando Valley, aimed at American soldiers, Pitts couldn't guess. They'd probably come back from Afghanistan and made their way into some collector's basement. He pulled the weapon up close and wrangled it around until he could move to the edge of the crow's nest. He removed the plastic safety screw cap from the end of the rocket to arm the impact fuse. He opened the iron sights on the top of the weapon and adjusted the rear sight to 70 meters, about the distance to the gorilla panel van. He couldn't fire the weapon from a prone position, but if he stood and revealed his entire body as a target, a trained combatant wouldn't waste the opportunity to take him down. Watson glanced up at the crow's nest where Pitts struggled with one of the RPG-7s. Pitts wanted an opportunity to use the weapon. Watson would give him that opportunity. He aimed at the three guerrillas' panel van and touched off suppressive bursts. Pitts perked up at the sound of MK-16 fire coming from the cattle truck. Hot damn, Watson, you're a son of a bitch. Pitts stood up and aimed the RPG-7 at the center guerrilla, careful to point the vent away from the Plastic Union 76 ball. He thumbed back the hammer and squeezed the trigger. The primer fired, sending the rocket several meters away before it ignited and rifled off like a football. Watson shrank back for cover. The three guerrillas' panel van lifted off the ground before going up like a bomb. Shrapnel flew in every direction. Bits of metal embedded in the smoke shop's stucco front. Most of the area's storefront windows blew out in the concussion. Heat wafted all around Watson as he crouched behind the cattle truck. As the blast subsided, he leaned out for a look up at the tower. With the three RPG-7s slung over his shoulder, Pitts descended the ladder. He moved out of view behind the horseshoe of burning tires. With the three guerrillas' moving van roiling in flames, Watson kept his rifle up and his eyes sharp for hostiles. He fired a few bursts of suppressive rounds for Pitts. After a handful of seconds, Pitts joined him. Chapter 11. Extraction time minus 61 minutes. Peltier, Tuttle, tattoos, and motorcycle jacket. Yellow letters spelled out First Salvation Christian Center against a navy blue field. The sign stood on a narrow stretch of lawn, well manicured until the walls came up around the annex. The Christian Center looked more like a YMCA than a church. An aftermarket steeple, probably made by volunteers, pointed to the sky, jutting from the side of the building like a paste-and-placed youth service project. Tuttle, Peltier, tattoos, and motorcycle jacket glanced across the street from cover, the Christian Center. They crouched behind a parked Cadillac Escalade, its 50-something-year-old driver dead and hunched over the steering wheel. Upon reaching the Christian Center, they realized that walking through the front doors wouldn't work. At least a dozen dogs meandered around the building. One of the men expressed a habit of shadow swinging with an aluminum baseball bat. "They want fresh meat," Tattoos said, balling up his hands. "Why can't they just leave us alone?" "Is there another entrance?" Tuttle asked. "In the back," Motorcycle Jacket said. "Freight dock and service entrance. They'll have everything locked up tight, but they'll just let us in when they recognize us." "How are we going to get back across the street?" Peltier asked. "Maybe we can cross the block or two upstream. A diversion would help," Tuttle said. Tattoos put a hand on the side of the Escalade. "I think I have an idea. One thing about shutting down the place, everyone leaves his keys in the car." He looked across the street to survey the turf between the front of the Escalade and the Christian Center. "We got a straight shot." "We'll run with whatever you have in mind, but you gotta make it big." "Oh, I will," Tattoos said. "Peltier and you," Tuttle pointed at Motorcycle Jacket, "with me. We'll find a way across. Give us 8 minutes. We'll watch for your diversion and cut to the other side. Hopefully we can meet you at the Christian Center's rear entrance." Tattoos nodded. Tuttle led the two others away. They moved through an alley and hooked left behind the buildings. After they left, Tattoos rummaged in a dumpster. He found a broken windshield brush, about 2.5 feet long, perfect for the job he had in mind. He quietly opened the driver's side door of the Escalade and found himself face to face with its driver. About 50 years old, the man had died behind the wheel. Red Ring brought on extreme exhaustion. Stop for a snooze and never wake up. Tattoos pushed the man over onto the center console and worked his legs up out of the way of the foot pedals. He checked his watch, only 2 minutes to go before the others would be looking for his part of the plan. He swallowed rising bile, wishing that he'd waited until the last possible moment before opening the driver's door and sharing the air with the man's rotting corpse. He watched the minutes tick by on his watch. After traveling behind several buildings, climbing 2 fences, and helping each other over a retaining wall, Tuttle, Peltier, and Motorcycle Jacket settled on an entry point to 7th Street between a flower shop and a boutique clothing store. Tuttle took the lead. He crunched up against the brick of the flower shop and peered around the corner. He checked the street. A dozen or so dogs loitered outside the Christian Center. Motorcycle Jacket stood behind Tuttle, breathing heavily under the cardiovascular strain of climbing fences and jogging behind buildings. "You gonna make it?" Peltier said, eyeing Motorcycle Jacket with a hooked brow. "I'll be fine. We move in 90 seconds, Tuttle said, checking his wristwatch. "We'll cut across between the jewelry shop and the law firm." He pointed to a narrow alley between the two buildings across the street. Tattoos checked the Escalade's alignment. It aimed roughly straight toward the Christian Center. He wedged the windshield brush between the seat and the accelerator pedal, ready to set it in place. He drew in a deep breath and eyed the dogs moving back and forth in front of the Christian Center. He hoped that the Escalade would take out at least one of those bastards on its approach. His world had turned into hell, and the men and women in front of the Christian Center and others like them had become the demons who ran the place. He glanced at his wristwatch and counted down the last few seconds. He craned his hand under the steering column until his fingers closed on the keys. What if the Escalade didn't start? The whole plan crumbled with one turn of the key. He held his breath, gave the Escalade a little gas with the windshield brush, and twisted. The engine roared to life a little louder than he expected. He snapped up a glance at the dogs. A few of them glanced his way and started talking amongst themselves. One of them, a woman with a machete, pointed across the street directly at the Escalade. Tattoos prepared to push the windshield brush into place, but then thought better of it. He held off for a few seconds, watching the dogs, trying to gauge their next actions. After a brief chat, three of them decided to cross the street and check out the disturbance. As they walked toward him, Tattoos' heart raced. He didn't know whether to smile or to cut and run. He had a chance to inflict a little bit of pain, as minuscule as it might be. He measured his breathing as the dogs approached, resisting the urge to flee the scene. He remembered something from his junior high school days. One of his most inspiring teachers had told the story of Colonel William Prescott, the Battle of Bunker Hill, and Charleston during the Revolutionary War. To conserve ammunition and increase the death toll to the enemy, Prescott had told his men, "Don't shoot until you see the whites of their eyes." Now, 2.5 centuries after the Battle of Bunker Hill, Tattoos heeded Prescott's advice. He stayed his hand on the windshield brush until 3 dogs came into terminal proximity. They mounted the sidewalk just outside the mouth of the alley. Finally, as they approached, Tattoos saw it, the whites of their eyes, spattered with patchworks of bloodshot red capillaries, a symptom of red ring. Tattoos pushed the windshield cleaner into place. The Escalade jumped forward. Tattoos barely leaped out of the way before the rear tires chirped by, leaving twin patches of rubber on the pavement. He landed hard on an elbow, barely noticed the pain that shot to his shoulder as he collided with the blacktop. Thump, thump! He heard 2 bone-cracking reports as the SUV jounced over the curb and cut into the street. He snuck just enough of a glance to see that the Escalade had rolled over 2 of the dogs. Without stalling to spot the third, he pushed up to his feet and ran up the alley, following the course set by Tuttle and the others. He heard the SUV roar across the street. He listened to the satisfying screams of dogs. Finally, as he scaled a fence behind a boutique suit shop, he heard the vehicle slam into brick and mortar. The SUV had probably mounted the curb, cut across the narrow stretch of grass, and smashed into the front of the Christian Center, hopefully smearing a few dogs against a building. Tattoos dropped down on the other side of the fence and tucked into a run, hoping that the soldiers and his friend would make it to the freight dock behind the Christian Center. He glanced over his shoulder and caught a glimpse of a dog in pursuit. Tattoos would have to deal with the woman, machete in one hand, before he reached the freight dock.
For today's song, I introduce you to a track that's been quite a journey. I find the creative process a roller coaster ride. Sometimes, as I'm putting a song together, I'm like, man, this song sucks. Why am I writing it? But I've learned that creativity gets messy. Only when I finish can I really judge it. I ended up liking this one in the end. I had fun singing the vocals in exact sync with the guitar licks, something that I've never done before. But hey, my opinion doesn't matter. Yours does. So I hope you like what you hear. called Get Ready. Let's jam.
Get ready, it's a matter of peace now. Get ready, it's a matter of war now. Get ready, it's a matter of peace now. Oh, get ready, on with the show now. Get ready, it's a matter of war now. Get ready, it's a matter of peace now. Get ready, it's a matter of war now. Oh, get ready, on with the show now. Carry on, my soldiers, onto a better day. Carry on, my soldiers, on with my better way. Keep your chin up, babies, everything's getting good. No, there ain't no maybe, we know the broader look. Take the wisdom blind that I've given, no, but never question what I say. You don't know the half of the bigger picture, sign the line and obey. It's a matter of war now. Get ready, it's a matter of peace now. Get ready, it's a matter of war now. Oh, get ready, on with the show now. Carry on, my soldiers, on with the better day. Carry on, my soldiers, on with my better way. Keep your chins up, baby, everything's getting good. No, there ain't no maybe, we know the broader look. Take the wisdom blind that I've given over, never question what I say. You don't know the half of the bigger picture, sign the line and obey.
Thanks for joining me on this episode of Terrifying Lies. Your support means everything, and I appreciate you tuning in. Don't forget to come back for the next episode where we'll uncover even more dark tales. Together, we'll continue to explore the cobwebbed corners of human imagination. Until next time, stay cautious and never stop questioning what's real. Until then, I bid you sweet dreams, or should I say, sweet nightmares.
This has been the Terrifying Lies podcast. Please come again. You're welcome here.